Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis, the show where we tried to tease out the connections between creativity and mental illness.
Yep.
And today, today we're looking at Abraham Lincoln.
One of America's most fascinating figures. I mean, just think about this line. He wrote it in his Sum book, basically a notebook where he practiced his penmanship as a kid.
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln is my name, and with my pen I wrote in both haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read.
Almost sounds Shakespearean.
Right. Even as a young man, he had this interesting mix of self-assurance and vulnerability.
It's like this little peek into his psyche,
Yeah.
this playful arrogance, but also this awareness that he's putting himself out there to be judged.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be unpacking today. Was there a connection between Lincoln's undeniable genius and the melancholy that seemed to follow him throughout his life?
Yeah, I mean, to get into all that, I think we have to start with his childhood.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a rough one. Losing his mother when he was young, a strained relationship with his father, and constantly needing to work to help his family survive.
Yeah. In his book, Lincoln, David Herbert Donald really stresses how much all of that impacted Lincoln. These hardships forced him to grow up fast, made him incredibly responsible. But it also created a kind of stoicism in him, a tendency to really internalize his emotions.
Makes you think of that story about his uncle Mordecai. Lincoln apparently said that Mordecai had run off with all the talents of the family.
Oh, yeah, that's a really insightful comment. I mean, here's Lincoln, a successful lawyer and politician, and he's still comparing himself to this figure from his past.
Right.
I think it suggests a real lingering sense of inadequacy, maybe even a fear that he wouldn't live up to his potential.
Which is wild when you consider all he accomplished.
Huh.
But I guess that gets to the heart of what we're talking about here, the light and shadow. So you've got this backdrop of real hardship. But then Lincoln does something pretty remarkable. He becomes a total bookworm, teaching himself law, literature, everything, really.
Oh, he was a classic autodidact, a real thirst for knowledge. And you can see that in the works that influenced him. The Bible, Shakespeare, The Pilgrim's Progress. He absorbed the words, but also like the rhythms, the cadence, it all comes out in his speeches, that almost poetic quality.
Right. So it's like he built this intellectual world, brick by brick, this intense self-education. Do you think that was connected to his melancholy in any way? A way to escape the turmoil or maybe even feed it?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was this drive a way of self-medicating? Or was it a part of the same sensitivity and introspection that caused his darker moods?
Yeah. And speaking of darker moods, we can't ignore the impact of loss on Lincoln, especially the death of Anne Rutledge.
Oh, yeah. This was more than just a young love lost. It was a blow that completely devastated him.
You can just imagine.
Witnesses say he was utterly inconsolable. Some even feared he would take his own life. And this kind of deep sadness, this melancholy as it was called then, it popped up throughout his life.
Right. And it's easy to want to romanticize those episodes, see them as the source of his genius. But I think we need to be careful with those kinds of connections.
Oh, for sure. We have to be careful. But still, it's really hard to ignore that these periods of darkness often coincided with some of his most creative periods.
Yeah, that's true.
So is it possible that while obviously a source of suffering, his melancholy also allowed him to tap into this well of empathy, a deeper understanding of what it means to be human?
It's like he was able to channel that pain, that darkness, into something profound.
Exactly. And it's that tension, that interplay between light and shadow that makes Lincoln such a captivating and honestly enigmatic figure and makes you wonder, would we even recognize that in a leader today?
That's a really good question.
Right. In today's world where it feels like image is everything and vulnerability is a weakness, could a Lincoln even rise to the top?
As like we want our leaders to be these perfectly polished figures. No flaws, no inner turmoil.
Yeah. But it's often those flaws, those moments of vulnerability that actually let us connect with someone, human to human.
And Lincoln, well, he certainly wasn't afraid to show that human side, even in his political career. I mean, the energy he put into those campaigns was unbelievable. The speeches, the travel, always strategizing. Looking back, it almost seems manic.
Yeah. In Donald's book, he talks about how even back then, some people saw it as obsessive, this relentless drive, this need to succeed. Like maybe it was a way to outrun those inner demons.
So are we saying his ambition was a product of his melancholy?
I don't think it's that straightforward.
Okay.
Ambition is complex. It can come from all sorts of places. But yeah, for Lincoln, it's possible that political success gave him this sense of purpose, a way to channel his energy into something positive.
Almost like proving his worth. To himself, to the world.
Right. There's this fascinating part in Donald's book. He quotes a letter Lincoln wrote to Albert G. Hodges back in 1864. And Lincoln actually acknowledges his own melancholy, but he also talks about how it's been a source of strength for him.
Wow. So he doesn't shy away from it.
Nope. He owns it. And that's what's so powerful. He doesn't see it as this weakness. It's a part of who he is. And I wonder, maybe that acceptance, that willingness to confront his own darkness, allowed him to lead with so much empathy and understanding.
Like he was able to relate to the suffering of others because he knew it so well himself.
Exactly. And that connection, that emotional connection, it was critical to his success as a leader, especially during a time of such incredible division and turmoil.
So it sounds like we're building this really complex picture here. This man shaped by hardship, driven by ambition, and constantly wrestling with his inner demons. But at the same time, he's got this incredible intellect, this deep empathy, and an unwavering commitment to his ideals.
It really reminds us that genius is rarely neat and tidy. It's often messy, full of contradictions, and it can pop up in the most unexpected places.
So in Lincoln's case, it seems like his melancholy, his madness, as it were, was a key part of his genius.
It's hard to say for sure, but that's what's so interesting about exploring these connections. We have to question our assumptions about creativity, about mental illness, about what it means to be human.
Yeah, it really makes you think. How do we view mental health, both in ourselves and in others?
Right. How would Lincoln deal with the world today, with everyone watching your every move and feeling like you have to project this perfect image all the time?
Oh man, Lincoln on Twitter. You even imagine.
I know, right? It's almost funny to think about, but it does kind of highlight something important. Back then, there was space for introspection, for that real depth of thought that we don't seem to have time for anymore.
It's like we've traded wisdom for speed. And I kind of feel like we've lost something crucial along the way.
I think you're right. And that's what makes Lincoln's story so powerful. It's a reminder that real leadership isn't about projecting an image of being perfect and strong. It's about embracing our humanity, all the messiness and contradictions.
It's about owning our flaws, our vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and using them to connect with other people.
Exactly. And in a way, Lincoln's legacy is about the power of empathy. He was able to lead during this incredibly difficult time, not because he was some stoic Superman, but because he understood the pain, the fear, and the hope of everyone around him.
He never tried to hide his own struggles. In fact, he let them shape his decisions, his words, his actions.
And because of that, he formed this incredible bond with people that went beyond politics. He became the symbol of resilience, of the human spirit's ability to overcome anything.
And that's a legacy that we can still learn from today. Our greatest strengths often come from the places we see as weaknesses.
Absolutely. And that's a message we all need to hear, especially these days.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Abraham Lincoln, let's hold on to that thought. Let's embrace those complicated parts of ourselves, be open about our vulnerabilities, and try to lead with empathy and understanding.
And remember that achieving greatness doesn't mean being perfect. It means embracing every part of who you are, the good and the bad, and using all of that to create something meaningful, something that lasts.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope it's made you curious and inspired you to keep asking questions about the connections between creativity, mental illness, and being human.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beautiful complexity of humanity.